Hello and welcome to lesson 3 of the summer school with me, Ruth Ann Richards. I'm the creator of the Intuition Connection and author of Reclaim Your Intuition. And I believe that when we're deeply connected to our intuition, we feel empowered, and as a result, life gets easier. And I would love more people, especially women, to feel that way. Sadly, many of us have lost that connection to our intuition, or we find it hard to trust it. It's one of the reasons I'm hosting this free summer school this year. So the first lesson of summer school was what is intuition and where does it come from? The second lesson got deep and meaningful about the otherworldly, spiritual beliefs, religious beliefs, belief systems, and asking you to question what you believe as an adult and what feels right for you now. So this week 3 is a little bit lighter, and I'm referring to my notes so I stay on track. But lesson 3 is coherence. And coherence, I believe, is an important principle in reclaiming our intuition and trusting it. So as you saw from the quote at the start, coherence is that feeling when you know something is completely right or something is completely wrong. But we want to focus on the coherence of how it feels when something feels completely right. And how does it feel? There is no second guessing, no imposter, no fear, no worry, no doubt. And it generally signifies you're making the right choice. Who wouldn't love to get rid of all those things, to release the fear, the doubt, the second guessing, and all that stuff that can hold us back? I love it, and I want more people to do as well. So, as you know, I can easily go off at a tangent, which is why I've got my notes, and I'm going to keep looking at my notes, but don't let that put you off. So if you're ready, find your comfortable space, avoid interruptions, turn off that phone, get your cuppa, and let's get going with coherence and how we integrate it into our everyday life. Let me ask you, what do you think about when you hear the word coherence? Does it have any meaning for you? Can you give it a definition or a meaning? Do you even understand what coherence means? One dictionary definition that I found of the word coherence is the situation when the parts of something fit together in a natural or reasonable way. So think about nature. There's a lot of chaos in nature, but there's a lot of coherence as well. There's symbiotic relationships between trees and fungi, and you also get the symbiotic relationships amongst animals as well. So coherence is when those things fit together in a reasonable way. Fungi grow around a tree because there's some chemical elements around there that makes them grow, and then there's something that the tree gets back from it as well. So it's this fitting together of things. But if we change the word situation to feeling, and we say the feeling when the parts of something fit together in a natural or reasonable way, we can start to apply that to how we feel personally about things and to our personal coherence. As humans, there are many parts to us, but we often forget those parts, or we don't understand how they all work together. We think as a human we are one single entity and we can only be one way or feel one way at a time. But the human and spiritual reality is much more complex, and we are made of many parts. For example, it's a generally accepted concept that we have a conscious mind, an unconscious mind, and there's also a subconscious part to our mind. So when we think about our mind alone, that's 3 different parts to that element already. Then, as we talked about in lesson 1, there's the gut, the abdomen, the area that is a brainy communicative system. It's a control centre in our body. And that's another part. But yet within that, there are so many parts as well. It's a fertile area. It's a place that gets rid of toxic waste. Our senses are yet more parts of us. So although we are a single entity as a human, we are a human being. We are complex because we're made up of so many different parts, some of which we can see, like our physical body, some of which we can't see and is very intangible, like our mind and our feeling and some of our senses. So we cannot see or touch these different parts of ourselves, but we know they're real because we experience them. And that's why they feel real to us. We experience an emotion, we experience a feeling, even if we can't see it or touch it, we know it's real because of our own experience. So when all these different parts of ourselves are not fitting together in a natural and reasonable way, our body sends us a message probably. We're being put on notice that we're not feeling coherent. So if you have been physically doing more than your body is capable of, you'll get a twinge, you'll get an ache. It will give you a message to tell you, we need to rest a little bit now, or it wants you to take notice of something. We're not in coherence when that happens. And when we personally are not in coherence, we can feel confused, we can feel doubt, fear, second guessing. When those things come up within us, that's when we need to go within and understand where and how and what part of us is not feeling coherent. Now, how do we know which part of us is out of sync, is not in coherence? So I want to give you my view of coherence, and specifically personal coherence, because it can be overwhelming thinking about these different parts of ourselves. And because I like to keep things simple, I think that most of the parts of ourselves can come under 4 different concepts or elements. And to think about it in this way: the heart, the body, the mind, and the soul. Now, you're probably familiar with that. You've heard of heart, body, mind, and soul, or heart, body, mind. But we're going to use this concept of heart, body, mind, and soul to understand where we lack coherence in ourselves. And the importance of coherence, I've said, is when our heart, body, mind, and soul are all in agreement, they're all in alignment, our choices get easier, life gets easier, we live within flow and intention, and we live more intuitively. So that's how, when we embrace coherence into our life, we also start to live a more intuitive life. I've gone off script. Intuition, again, is another part of us. It is not separate to us. It's some part of us. And through working with the concept of heart, body, mind, and soul, using those 4 elements, we allow ourselves to live intuitively. And by doing that, we feel the magic of coherence. So let me fill out a bit more about heart, body, mind, and soul and how it helps with coherence and ultimately living an intuitive life. So the heart centre, the heart is a very physical thing in our body as well. But we also have this concept of having heart. And what do we mean by that? Well, to me, it's a representation of love, compassion, tolerance, and respect. You may want to add more things in there that you think are heart-centred, but for me, that's what the heart means: love, compassion, tolerance, and respect. And it's more than just the love that we might think of for a partner, a significant other, for children, family, and friends. It's love that exudes from us for the whole of humanity and the planet. It's about feeling love without limits. It's about understanding unconditional love for every living thing around you. Now, that does not mean that you have to go around telling everyone that you love them. Of course, those close to you, you would do that. But the idea of the heart and the heart centre is about a state of being. It's about being and showing love at all times, being compassionate, and being tolerant, and being respectful. And I believe that those things are what drive us being empathic. They create an empathic being. And that's an important part of being intuitive. Many intuitive people are naturally empaths. Important to note as well, about the heart centre, love, compassion, tolerance, and respect doesn't mean that people can take advantage of you and you're a walkover. Far from it. Living with love, compassion, tolerance, and respect makes you stronger from within. And it helps create the empowerment we're going to talk about later. So this is a really important first element of coherence. Now, if you've seen lesson 1 and you remember it, you'll know that we touched on the body in the first lesson, and particularly the importance of the abdomen area to all humans, but especially women. It's a very fertile area. It's where we can create life and give birth. It's also got a symbolic and metaphorical meaning of creating new projects in life. It comes from this deep down part of us. It also eliminates and releases waste products from the body. So it's giving life and release, and it's creating this amazing symbiotic balance of creating what we need and releasing what we don't. It's a major control centre, as I said earlier. If our body does not function well, we know about it. And we talked before in lesson 1 that intuition shows up in that area of our body. And if you remember, we talked about we get goosebumps as well and sensations in our body that can tell us when something's not right, when we're in a situation that doesn't feel it holds the same values for us, so we feel fear or scared, or we just feel we're with a person who is very uncomfortable and we don't want to be with them. We get those feelings, and often they're in the abdomen area. So that's a great way to understand that how our body gives a message to let us know that there's a situation that does not fit together in a natural and reasonable way for us. If you've ever been in a room with a person, probably a man, that you felt very uncomfortable with, perhaps they were too tactile, or they were inappropriate with their words and their language, or worse, you know you get that physical sensation in your body that says get the hell out of there, right? And that's the idea of we're not coherent, things are not fitting together in a natural and safe and reasonable way for us. So coherence works both ways. It lets you know when something's not right, and also how to put it right so you can get back to coherence. So that's how our body plays a part in our personal coherence. Now the mind, heart, body, mind. What can we say about the mind? Here's what I think. I think the mind likes to think it's in control and that it's running the show. And as humans, we generally allow that to happen because we live in a society that values the rational mind over everything else. And you'll have heard me say, I think I said this in lesson 1, it's time for the intuitive part of us to have the same value in society as the conscious, rational, analytical mind. And it doesn't at the moment. But things are going to change. So the mind is generally running the show because it thinks, well, it's conscious, it's logical, it's rational. Of course it's running the show. Why wouldn't it be? But the universal and spiritual truth is that the mind is there to take the actions and the tasks that our coherent self wants to do. So when we make a coherent choice from heart, body, mind and soul, everything's in agreement, there's no second guessing, doubt or imposter, then the conscious mind needs to kick in motion. The conscious mind shouldn't be making decisions all the time. It's the part of us that we use to do. It's the part of us we use to take action once we've made a decision from that inner place of coherence. So think of the mind as a project manager. You know, it's not always making the decisions, but once we have coherence and we've made a choice that feels absolutely right to us and the situation fits together in that natural and reasonable way, then we engage the mind to implement that choice. It can go out and take all the actions and project manage. The mind is the home of the ego. It's the home of second guessing, doubt, fear, and all led by an imposter. Now, some of those things are important in our life because the second guessing and the doubt may make us think more deeply about something, and it should. If we have second guessing, doubt or fear about something, we should be thinking about it more deeply because we're not in coherence. So what's the message that's coming to you from your heart, body, mind and soul? Is it you need more information to make a choice? Is it that you just know this doesn't fit with your values, but someone is telling you such a compelling story, you know, you want to be involved, but you know something's not quite right. So we do need those things to tell us when something isn't right, but we don't need them to take over. They are there as an early warning system, as a trigger to say, I need to bring this to your attention. But that is their role. That is the only role that they should have. To tell us that something's not quite right and for us to pay attention to it. Because when we get back to coherence and everything falls into place, all those things just drop away. There's nothing for them to protest about any further, and life becomes so much easier. So let's move on to the soul. How would you describe soul? How would you describe your soul? This intangible part of ourselves that we cannot see, we cannot touch, but yet somehow we know it exists, it has life, and it has meaning. So if you close your eyes for a moment and use your mind's eye to imagine, what does your soul look like? Do words come up? Do you see words, or do words come into your mind? Do you get a feeling? Do you get a sense? What is your soul? For me, the soul is the place where the deepest and intangible parts of us can reside. Feelings such as anger, rage, hope, desperation, joy, ecstasy, they all exist there, from both polar extremes of negative to positive and everything in the middle. Soul is the home of intuition. Beyond our skills and talents and achievements, the soul is where our personality, our essence, our spirit, our character, if you like, lives. Our soul safeguards and holds our desires and longings. It reminds us of what we want in the world. So that's my concept of the heart, body, mind and soul, and why paying attention to our whole being in those 4 ways can help us understand when we're not in coherence, because it gives us a message on what to pay attention to allow ourselves to get back into coherence. Because once we experience the magic of coherence, and trust me, it is magic, something amazing happens in our lives. Let me tell you what happens when I feel the magic of personal coherence, where my heart, body, mind and soul are all in agreement, they're all aligned. I feel like a superhero. I feel empowered. And here's how empowerment plays out for me. I can say yes to more of what brings me joy and happiness. I can say no to more of the things that don't. I don't worry, or I worry less about what people think, because I've made a choice that's right for me. And if the choice I make for me benefits others too, that's great. But it also empowers me to choose to do things I wouldn't usually do. But I know that by doing it, it could make others happy or help them. I don't feel duty bound, which would mean I would do it miserably and with no good intention. But instead, I can do something that I might not want to do with good intention and do it happily. It becomes easier to co-create, and I use the term co-create rather than manifesting, and there'll be more of that in next week's lesson. And I start to live happily, intentionally. My life is in flow, and it feels great. So if anything does go wrong or something unexpected happens, I'm in a much better place to cope with it. This is what living an intuitive life for me is all about. It's living with intention, it's being in flow, and making choices that are coherent and allows me to feel empowered. And that coherence comes from my heart, body, mind and soul all saying, yeah, we think this is the right thing. And when I don't feel that coherence, to me paying attention to why I don't, and then choosing what to do about it. It's a beautiful way to live. As I said, there are still bumps in the road, but when you focus on feeling your intuition and you pay attention to the parts of you that are not feeling coherent, those bumps in the road just become so much more manageable. There's less drama, there's less stress, there's less worry. And quite simply, I would love more people, and especially women, to feel this way and live this way. So let me finish this week's lesson by sharing a promise I made to myself. I'd like to share with you the empowered woman's promise to herself, and it's something I wrote in my book, Reclaim Your Intuition. I love myself, even when I feel like I have screwed up, and even when it's a bad hair day or I've put on a few pounds. I take responsibility for my actions and feelings. I do not waste time on blame, shame, or guilt. I commit to caring for myself in every way, physically, body, intellectually, mind, psychologically, and intuitively. I nourish all these parts of me. I am a Chiving goddess. Feel free to use that if it helps you. Look in a mirror and say it out loud, or create your own promise to yourself to live an intuitively empowered life. The promise you're going to make to yourself to nourish these different parts of you that can be part of the heart, the mind, the body, or the soul. Because once you feel empowered, you can start to shape your life the way you want it. And that brings us on to next week's lesson. Thank you so much for watching this week's lesson on coherence and how integrating it into your everyday life can help you bring intuition into your life every day as well. Just using the simple concept of heart, body, mind and soul, recognising where you don't have coherence, spending time with your inner self on that, and creating the life you want. Now, next week in lesson 4, I'm talking about manifesting and specifically busting the myths around this subject and why it's so misunderstood. So if you've ever felt like you've been manifesting your little socks off and it's just never happened and never works for you, I get that. And next week I'll be sharing why it hasn't worked for you and what you can do about it to change that. So see you next week for manifesting, busting the myths. Take care. Bye.